Robert was a 35-year-old man. At least he used to be. He didn't really know what he was now. But he knew he had changed. And, as he sat at the bar, he admitted to himself that he liked it. Until a year ago, in fact almost a year to the day, Robert was the stereotypical man. He was married, wore a suit to his office job every weekday, did the lawn on weekends, and could talk cars and sports with the guys. Like a lot of guys, he never could understand women. Their focus on trivial stuff just baffled and annoyed him. Who could care less about what clothes someone was wearing? It actually seemed pretty simple to him, the less the better for women. And they would gab. Jesus, he thought, just do stuff, don't talk about it. He loved his wife, Debbie, of course. No question about that. He couldn't help but get aroused just looking at her. She was, he felt, the sexiest woman alive. But, and he never admitted this to her or anyone, she bored him outside of bed. Beyond lust, there was just not that much in common between them. They seemed to live separate lives, her doing her women's stuff, and him being him. He loved his kids too. His son, Jason, at 17 was his buddy. Together, Jason and he did just about everything, played sports, watched TV, fiddled with their cars. Jennifer, his daughter, at 15, was his little princess. Her world was much less understood by him, full of secret girl interests and activities. She seemed to be an endless source of expenses, clothes alone seemed to take up most of his salary. But he couldn't resist anything she asked. One little pout, one little twinkle in her eye, and he melted, helplessly writing a check for whatever she wanted. All in all, it was a pretty normal existence. And it no doubt would have remained normal, except for a bizarre series of events that took place in a lab about 20 miles away. Robert knew nothing about it, nor did anyone in the neighborhood. Or anyone in the country outside the Defense Department. The lab tested biological warfare agents. Nothing that would kill people. This lab had been charged with developing non-lethal bioagents, things that would incapacitate or make harmless potential enemies. Over the years, a multitude of different approaches was tried. Sleep inducers, paralysis, memory agents, muscle weakeners, all were tried and rejected. The latest idea was perhaps the craziest of all. The idea was to change the DNA of the enemy to reduce their male hormone output and increase female hormone output. The general ideas was to make enemy soldiers less aggressive and more docile, and thus easier to overcome. It was a rather far-fetched idea, and never taken quite seriously by the brass at the Pentagon. Or at least those few that knew about it. They allowed it to proceed when budgets were lax, though, more or less just because they couldn't think of any better ways to use the money. What does all this have to do with Robert? Well, nothing. Nothing except that by blind bad luck, he was driving behind a van from the lab one morning during rush hour. He was taking a sip of coffee, looked away from the road for a second, and bam! He smacked right into the van. He wasn't hurt, but both vehicles looked rather badly crunched. He did manage to open his door, and was stepping out when a pressurized jet of liquid shot out of the van, soaking him top to bottom. The van driver looked horrified. Robert said he was okay though. The van driver was more concerned, but given the secret nature of the project, had been told the liquid he was carrying was just salinated water. So, both thought, no harm done. And in fact it seemed no harm was done. Robert went home, and changed clothes before heading off to work. The dry suit he put on seems maybe just a little bit baggy to him, but that wasn't a big cause for concern. Nor was the fact that he had to adjust the seat on his car to comfortably reach the steering wheel. The car, after all, had been banged up, so that sort of thing was to be expected. Arriving at work, he felt vaguely uncomfortable, however. His stomach was cramping up, and his muscles were getting increasingly sore. It was really painful, though. So Robert went ahead and worked a full day, and came home at the usual time. When his wife saw him, though, she looked concerned. His suit was disheveled and his shirt was falling out of his pants. He looked like he had been sweating, and his voice was hoarse and dry. Deb gave him no choice, he had to go to bed for his own good. Tomorrow she would drive him to Dr. Mann's office to be looked at. She didn't know what could be wrong, but it was silly to take chances. Rob went to bed. He slept soundly at first, but then became increasingly uncomfortable. His skin was twitching, almost crawling it seemed. His muscles were hurting, and even his bones seemed to be compressing. The sheets, and even his pajamas were beginning to irritate his skin, as if it had suddenly become more sensitive. His stomach was churning, and it felt a heaviness on his chest. And then, about 5 a.m., he felt a sudden and sharp pain in his groin. "Ouch," he yelled out flexibly. "Rob, are you okay?" Deb asked. "I don't know," he answered. Something really hurt. The voice was high-pitched. "Robert?" Deb asked tentatively, suddenly not recognizing the person in bed next to her. Rob was at that moment more concerned with the pain down there. Hoping there was no permanent injury to the family jewels, he gently reached down with his hand to check out the good. As his fingers reached down his stomach and lower, he was confused by the feel of smooth skin. Gone was the furry mat of hair he had had since puberty. Going down further, he felt around in vain for the jewels. There was nothing. No penis, no balls, no sign of anything. Just smooth skin. Correction, not smooth, there was a small slit. "Oh my God!" Rob screamed as he jumped out of bed. "Jesus, who are you?" Deb screamed as he stood up. Both then suddenly went silent as Deb stared at Rob, and Rob stared at Deb. "Who are you?" Deb repeated. "Your husband." "I'm your husband." "What do you think?" Rob answered. More seconds of silence ticked by. Rob then turned slightly to face the full-length mirror over by Deb's makeup counter. In an instant he saw how ridiculous his contention was. There is the mirror where he should have been was a girl. A pretty girl, maybe 16. She was about 5 feet 5 inches, very thin, pretty, though smallish, breasts, a pixie-like face with the tiniest button nose he'd ever seen. The hair was short, about as short as Rob had ever had it, but very fine, and maybe a few shades lighter brown than Rob had. "Is that me?" he asked Deb, his voice quivering in fright. Logically, Deb knew she should be suspicious. But seeing the scared look in her eyes, the honest horror, and all distrust was washed away. This girl, this naked, scared little girl in her bedroom, was her husband Rob. And she wanted to comfort him. She rushed over and hugged the girl, who began to cry uncontrollably. "What's happened to me?" Robert sobbed. "Why do I look like this?" "I don't know, honey," Deb whispered. "But don't worry, it'll be all right. It'll be all right." After a few minutes, Deb heard the kids out in the living room. She knew they'd be looking for breakfast, and she sure didn't want them coming in the bedroom asking her to fix it. "Look, sweetie," she said. "Why don't you go wash up, while I go get the kids off to school?" Robert nodded, trying to smile just a little, and headed off to the bathroom. In the bathroom, Robert had his first opportunity to really examine his new body. He was certainly short now. He felt the bathroom counter was twice as large as it used to be. Fortunately, Deb had put in a full-length mirror there too. He thought it was frivolous at the time. Now it seemed essential. The girl in the mirror was even prettier than he thought at first. She looked even younger than he had first guessed, probably 15. There wasn't a trace of hair anywhere on her body except a wisp on her groin and the short hair on her head. She was pencil thin, but not awkward looking. Her arms were like pencils, a far cry from the muscled arms Rob was used to. Oddly, however, he didn't feel any sexual attraction for this girl. It wasn't just because of her age; she was young enough to be her daughter. It was more than that. Looking at her made nothing stir for him. Nothing at all. Strangely, that concerned him. For some reason, he wondered whether people thought she was pretty. "Well, they're gone," Deb announced, stepping into the bedroom just as Rob came out of the bath. "So, what now?" Rob asked. Deb hesitated a second. Up until today, Robert tended to make all the big decisions. He always knew what to do, and she was used to following his lead. This was probably the first time she could remember that Rob had asked her for ideas. "Well," Deb said, almost thinking aloud, "I think you should go to a doctor." "Dr. Mann." Robert nodded happily. "Yes, that makes sense." "So let's get dressed and go," Deb said. "I'm sure getting in to see him right away won't be a problem given the circumstances." Again, Robert nodded. He went over to his closet, then stopped. Debbie," he asked. "What in the world should I wear?" She frowned a second, staring at Robert. She laughed slightly. The idea of this girl trying to put on any of Rob's clothes was almost comical. Then she smiled brightly and said, "Follow me, I know where we have some clothes just perfect for you." Sure enough, as Rob had guessed, she led him to Jenny's room. "No way!" Rob practically screamed and tried to leave the room. Deb caught him by his tiny arm, however, and effortlessly held him at bay while she searched through Jen's closet. "She's 15, Rob, just the age I'd guess you are right now," she explained. "It makes perfect sense." Rob reluctantly agreed. He sat on the bed, resigned, and almost pouting as Deb rummaged through the clothes. "Just no skirts or dresses, okay?" Rob begged. Deb agreed, although she had to admit to herself that they would look good on this girl. Eventually, she picked out a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. "There," she said, "you don't get much more boyish than that." Rob agreed. Deb then found a brand new package of panties in the drawer, putting that on the bed, along with a bra. "Do I have to wear that?" Rob asked, knowing the answer. "Yes, young lady. I won't have you going out braless in public." Rob knew she meant it sarcastically, but even so, the authority in her voice discouraged him from protesting further. Deb left the room, and Rob began to dress. The panties' white bikinis went on without much trouble. They weren't much different than his normal underwear, although it was strange having nothing to tuck when they went up his legs. Then the bra, which he strangely enough had no trouble getting on. The jeans were more of a problem; they were certainly tight, and he had to tug and pull for several minutes to get them over his hips. Only with the greatest effort could he zip and button them. Then came the tee. It didn't fit. "Deb, this won't work," he announced, coming out into the living room where Deb was waiting. "I must be the wrong size. Look. These pants are way too tight, and the shirt is ridiculous. It doesn't even come close to covering up my waist." Debbie laughed out loud. "Rob, those clothes fit perfectly on you." She explained to him that the jeans were supposed to fit tight, and the t-shirt was made to show off the midriff. "So this is okay?" Rob asked. "You look adorable." "Yes, it's perfect," she said. So, a little bit embarrassed but a little bit pleased at the compliment, they got into Deb's car and drove to the doctor. Walking in, Deb said to the receptionist, "We are here to see Dr. Mann." "I made an appointment." "For you or your daughter?" asked the receptionist. "I am not her daughter," yelled out Rob. "She's my niece," jumped in Deb. "I had to say something," she whispered to Rob. Grumpily, Rob sat down on a chair, waiting for the doctor. After about 15 minutes, they went in to see Dr. Mann. They explained the situation, and he just looked at them passively. "Would you please take your clothes off and lie down?" he asked Rob. Rob looked at Deb, pleadingly. For some reason, he just didn't want to disrobe in front of this man. "Go ahead, sweetie," Deb said reassuringly. "Do what he says." He went ahead and took off the tee and jeans. But then he stopped. "Panties and bra too," he said. Rob indicated for Dr. Mann to turn around, and only then did he finish undressing. He felt so humiliated, lying there naked while this man touched him all over. It was strange, really. Dr. Mann had been his doctor for years, and had seen him naked dozens of times. But this time it just didn't feel right. When he was done, and had left the room, Rob put his clothes back on. After about half an hour, Dr. Mann came back. "So, what's the problem?" Rob asked. Dr. Mann stared at his chart for a second and said, "Well, you are a girl." "Thanks, loads, Doc," Rob cried. "No, I'm serious. By all indications, you are physically a girl. I can't detect any male characteristics. I am completely flummoxed by this. I'm going to send you over for some more tests and get you a referral to a specialist. I admit, however, I don't even know yet what kind of specialist would handle this sort of thing." "Okay," Rob said, his voice very small and weak. He felt like he was going to cry, again. "That's okay, Rob," Dr. Mann said, touching him lightly on the shoulder and under the chin. "We will get to the bottom of this." That made Rob feel better. There was hope, he figured. And someone was on his side. He wanted to reach over and kiss Dr. Mann right then and there, but thought better of it. The tests weren't scheduled until the next day, so Deb and Rob headed home. "So, what now?" Rob asked, again looking to his wife for leadership. "Well, school's out, and Jason and Jen are at home. I think it's time we tell them." "I suppose so," Rob replied, not knowing at all what their reaction would be. Rob woke up, after a chemical accident, in the body of a 15-year-old girl. After a trip to the doctor, he comes home with his wife Deb to break the news to his children. When Deb walked into the living room, she found Jen on the phone talking to some friends, and Jason laying on the floor watching ESPN. "Hey, guys," Deb said, "we need to talk." Jen barely responded, and continued to talk. "Can it wait?" said Josh, watching a game intently. Deb, a bit stressed, said a bit too strongly no. Josh and Jen were a bit surprised, and looked up, surprised at the outburst. Your father is." Just then Rob walked in. Josh saw him first and jumped to his feet. He wasn't expecting Mom to have someone with her, least of all a cute girl. "Hi," he stammered, tucking in his shirt and straightening his hair. Rob smiled nervously. "Hi, Jason," he said. "Hey, how did you know my name?" Jason said. He was confused, but a little bit pleased that this girl seemed to know him already. He looked her over closely. Definitely cute, he thought. Jen, meanwhile, was quietly staring at the new girl from the other side of the room. She hung up the phone, and then walked over to Rob. "Hi, I'm Jen," she said coldly. You seem to be wearing my clothes. She couldn't believe that her mom had lent her clothing to this girl. Rob looked down at himself quickly, mentally kicking himself for not realizing Jen would recognize her own clothing. He had never thought much about clothes, but he should have known Jen would recognize her own jeans and t-shirt like a mother would recognize her own baby. "I'm sorry, princess, I didn't have a choice," he blurted out. Everyone stopped talking for a second. Jen stared at Rob. Rob looked over at Deb, who was watching Jason, who looked confused and was staring at Rob. Finally, Jen broke the silence, saying icily, "Did you just call me princess?" "Sit down, kids," Deb said. They didn't. Josh and Jen just stood there, confused. "There's been an accident. We don't know how it happened, but your father woke up this morning like this," she said, pointing to Rob. Silence. "My father is like you?" Jen said to Rob. "I don't get it." "I'm your father," Rob said. "Something happened and I turned into this." Josh started to laugh. "Yeah, right," said Jen. "It's me." "Really?" said Rob. "Anyone else call you princess?" "Josh, we were going to the Giants game next week, but we hadn't told anyone else, right?" They were skeptical. They quizzed him. "What did you get me for Christmas?" "For my birthday last year?" "What songs did you sing to me when I was little?" "Where do we keep the cereal?" "What's your favorite hockey team?" "What's your favorite color?" He passed all the tests. It was enough for Jen. "But you look like 15. "You're like my age," Jen squealed. Rob answered, "I don't know exactly how old I am, princess, but that's my guess too." Jen rushed over to Rob. "Oh, Daddy. I'm so sorry. Are you all right?" Jason kept his distance, not convinced. Rob and Deb explained the whole situation to the kids, telling them about the accident, waking up the next morning, the trip to Dr. Mann's, everything. Josh, not buying any of it, said he had to leave. "I'm meeting up with some friends," he said. He rushed out, relieved he didn't have to stay around. "I think Josh needs some time," ventured Jen. She looked over to Jen, wondering what she thought. Jen just stared. "Well, it's kind of freaky that he is wearing my clothes." "Well, I did buy most of them for you." Rob snapped back. "Not those, I got those jeans myself." "Where did you get the money for that young lady?" Rob demanded. But in his melodic, high-pitched voice he sounded ridiculous. Jen started laughing, and couldn't stop. Rob was mortified. His best head of household voice no longer had any authority. Deb could see the hurt look on Rob's face. "Look, Jen, it's time for bed anyway. Why don't you guys go change? You let your dad have something of yours to sleep in tonight, and then tomorrow I'll take him shopping for his own stuff, okay?" Rob at first was feeling a little uneasy about the whole idea. His own clothes? He hadn't thought about it, but it did make sense. They had no idea when they'd be able to get this whole thing reversed. Still, it troubled him that Deb was acting the peacemaker, more like a mom ending a squabble between two sisters than his wife. "Come on, Dad," said Jen. "You heard what Mom said. She was really having some fun with this. Go change." "But Mom, DB, said you have to give me something of yours for tonight." "Okay, let's go together," Jen said, taking Rob's hand and practically dragging him into her bedroom. "Okay, take it off," she demanded. Rob looked sheepish and started to protest. Daddy, it's not like you have anything I haven't seen," she reminded him. He didn't want to make trouble, so he went ahead and pulled off the tee, then unzippered the jeans and pulled them off. Jen looked on quietly. You know, Dad, whatever happened to you sure gave you a great bod. You'd make quite an impression with the boys at my school. Rob was taken aback. But you'd have to do something about that hair, and definitely a little makeup would help. Rob smiled happily, then came back to his senses. Well, that's not something I'm interested in, he said. Can I get my pajamas now? He said. I don't have pajamas, Daddy, he said. Have you ever seen me in PJs? Then what do you have? He said, as he opened the drawer to look for himself. There was a good selection of stuff there, but for the life of him, he couldn't find anything with pants. Jen laughed. A little too girly for you, huh? He nodded. Finally, he found a long t-shirt, which he slipped on over his panties. It fell to mid-thigh on him. OMG, you are cute, said Jen, completely sincerely. Hold on, she said quickly, fishing out a matching t-shirt, which she quickly changed into. We're twins, she beamed. Rob should have been horrified, but he wasn't. Instead, he smiled and laughed. Then the laughing turned into giggles. No way, he said. Wear something else. No, Jen said defiantly. Yes. Then, on impulse, Rob hit her with a pillow. Jen hit back. They were going back and forth like this when Deb came into the room. Girls, she yelled. What is going on? They both looked sheepishly at her. Rob was especially embarrassed. He didn't know what got into him. It all seemed so much fun, he just didn't think. Are you finished here, Rob? Said Deb. Yes, I am, he said, and walked out of the room. I think we all need to go to sleep, Deb announced. It's been a long day. Yeah, it has, Rob said, trying to re-establish some dignity. I think we all need to go to bed. Mom just said that, said Jen, rolling her eyes. Rob glared at her, then turned and stalked off to the bedroom. You should give her some slack, Deb said to Jen. She's still your father. She? Jen asked. You know what I mean, Deb said, and followed Rob into the bedroom. Rob slept fitfully, as might be imagined. It wasn't just his body that was keeping him up, although that was enough. He was also emotionally disrupted. One moment he was feeling fine and drifting off to sleep, and then he'd feel suddenly frightened. Then he'd be overcome by sadness, and almost start to cry. Then he'd feel overwhelmingly giddy, for no reason. All in all, he only got about 3 hours sleep, waking up about 6. Still dressed in Jen's long tee, he walked into the living room and turned on the TV, keeping the volume low so as to not wake anyone. On came ESPN, and he was glad to see that there was a Cubs game on. They were in the middle of a pennant race, and this game was key. It was a close game too, and an exciting one. The pitcher was one of his favorites. He had a great fastball and perfect motion when he wound up for the throw. His arms were muscular, but not too much. His uniform, Rob thought, fit him perfectly, showing the shape of his body, and the most perfect but he had ever seen. Rob stopped in his mental tracks. What the hell had he been thinking? He wasn't gay, he knew that. Never a hint of that. Nothing at all. So why was he thinking this guy was cute? Of course, the pitcher was cute. There was no denying that. He had never noticed it before. And there's nothing wrong with noticing something that was true, was there? Suddenly, his mental debate with himself was interrupted when Jason came in the room. Rob reflexively tried to cover himself up, suddenly embarrassed for this boy to see him in just the t-shirt. Jason looked equally embarrassed. So what's your name? He said. You know that, said Rob. Ha. I don't know what your problem is, but you are not my father, he said. Do you think I'm an idiot? I'd like to prove it to you, he said. I bet I can prove you are not, Jason said. Jason got a devilish grin on his face. Okay, I know when you couldn't have studied for. When we were in the camping last year, you and me, what game did we play? Rob was stumped. Jason started to smile. Yeah, I knew that no girl would know. Look, I can't remember everything, but I am your dad. Right, Jason said. Then show me your boobs. Rob was stunned. Show me your boobs. If you aren't really a girl, you'd show them to me. Go ahead. It would be easy to do, Rob thought. He could lift up the tee and show his breasts to Rob, convincing him of who he was. And giving him a treat in the process. Okay, he said, reaching for the tee, and starting to slowly lift it up. He could see Jason's eyes grow bigger and bigger. This was clearly having an effect on him. And it was rather fun. But he stopped. It felt, well, wrong. For many reasons. I won't do that, Jason. Tease. Jason said. Am not, Rob answered, and stuck out his tongue at him. That shut Rob up, and he just smiled. Well, that is something my dad would never do, he said. Rob retracted his tongue. Like last night's pillow fight, he had simply lost himself in the moment. He stared at Jason, giving him the coldest stare he could muster. Oh, now the girl's not talking at all, Jason taunted. He went into the kitchen to pour some cereal, then came back and sat next to Rob. Several minutes passed in silence. Then, Rob said, long-distance pissing what? The game we played, Rob said. In the meadow. I won 17 feet. You hit a squirrel. You also lost control and peed all over your pants. You changed clothes and made me swear never to tell anyone. Dad? Jason said. Like I told you, Rob replied. But you are a girl? He was visibly shaken. This cute girl wasn't a girl at all. It was his father, for God's sake. Did you lose? I mean, like everything? He said. Rob didn't answer. But you are still a guy upstairs, right? I mean, you aren't gay now or anything? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous, Jason, he assured him, not knowing whether he was lying or not. Good, Jason said, without conviction, as he went into his room to change. Rob was still sitting on the couch when Jen came in, wearing the matching t-shirt. Morning, sis, she said chirpily. I'm your dad, not your sister, remember? Rob said. Well, I've decided that you just don't look like a dad, and I don't think you act like a dad, so I'm gonna call you my sister. Like an honorary sister. Okay? Rob was in no mood to argue. And he was glad also that whatever he called her, she was accepting the change. Okay, sister, he said with as much sarcasm as he could muster. By the way, sister, she said. I know you'll need clothes one more time, so I left some on my bed. Please wear those. Don't go fishing through my stuff, okay? Okay, Rob said, feeling rather chided. Rob watched TV until Jason and Jen had both left for school. She then washed up and showered, and headed into Jen's room to get the clothes. It was another pair of jeans. It seemed she had hundreds, and a pink top. Jen was having fun with him, because written across the tee was the word princess. And beside that was a thong panty and a bra. Oh, just great. He started to rummage for another shirt, but remembered her warning. He didn't want to get on her bad side. He couldn't handle that, so he put on the garments. They fit incredibly, he had to admit. The jeans were low-rise, and the top stopped at mid-tummy, showing off Rob's midriff completely. The tee was rather tight, and Rob worried briefly that it was a tad slutty-looking. He found himself posing in the mirror to decide whether he liked it. Front view, side view, looking over his shoulder to see his butt, every angle was considered. Yes, it would do, he figured. He then put on some sandals Jen had left out, and walked into the living room. Deb was there, and her jaw dropped when he saw Rob. "Oh my God," she said. Rob just smiled, too pleased with the reaction to be embarrassed. "Rob, I never thought I'd say this to you, but you are adorable. Whatever that chemical did to you, it knew what it was doing." Rob blushed. He didn't know what to say. Finally, he blurted out, "I'm still your husband, of course. This isn't the real me." "I know, sweetie," Deb responded, "I won't forget." She sounded a little bit patronizing. "Anyway, here's the plan for today. We have to go shopping to get you some clothes of your own. Then we go back to the doctor's office. Dr. Mann said the tests came in and he wants to talk to us this afternoon. It would be an interesting day." Rob faces the second day after a chemical spill that changed him into a 15-year-old girl. "Here's the plan for today," said Deb, Rob's wife. "We have to go shopping to get you some clothes of your own. Then we go back to the doctor's office. Dr. Mann said the tests came in and he wants to talk to us this afternoon." Rob wasn't too enthusiastic about the idea. "Do I really have to?" he said. Frustratingly, his voice sounded whiny. "I think there's no choice," Deb answered. "You really can't go around wearing Jen's clothes every day." Rob was a little bit puzzled. After all, they hadn't even heard back from Dr. Mann yet. What if he had some antidote already that would reverse this? Then he wouldn't need new clothes. He started to say, "No. Let's wait to hear from Dr. Mann first." But instead of that authoritative statement, he heard himself saying, "Maybe we could see Dr. Mann first." Wouldn't that work? Deb paused. "Oh, sweetie," she said. "Don't get your hopes up. I really don't think Dr. Mann will be able to fix this today. We really do need to get you clothes of your own." That made sense. He felt glad that Deb was thinking this through. But, he wondered, why was she so sure that Dr. Mann couldn't fix this right away? Rob wasn't around when his office called. Did they tell Deb more than she is letting on? He suddenly felt left out, like people weren't telling him everything. But Deb had been really looking out for him, and he felt kind of bad for even doubting her. They went outside to go to the car. Rob started for the driver's side, but Deb cut him off. "Sorry. I'm afraid I'll be the driver today," she said. Rob had forgotten he had no license and actually wouldn't even be eligible for one for another year. So around to the other side he went, settling into the passenger seat. It was a short trip to the mall, and he was relieved it was not very crowded when they got there. "So where should we go first?" Deb asked, a little too enthusiastically for Rob's taste. "I don't know, just some place I can grab some jeans and some shirts." Deb frowned. "Let's try Macy's, they always have some cute stuff in their juniors department." On the way there, Rob was feeling a little self-conscious. Here he was, in public, wearing his daughter's clothes, going to buy some more girls' clothes. To his relief, however, no one seemed to be paying much attention to them. Finally, they arrived at Macy's, and found a section called Fittingly, This Is It. Rob started looking for jeans, and found a dizzying array of styles. Finally, he got some called skinny jeans, in his size which, he guessed, based on Jen's clothes he was wearing, was size 7. He started to head to the cashier. "Whoa, girl, said Deb. Are you sure those fit? You need to try those on. She led him over to the dressing room. Rob had wanted to avoid this. He never had enjoyed spending time at the store, but he had to admit that Deb had a point. A sales clerk about 19 he figured unlocked a door and sent him in to change. It only took him a couple of seconds. The jeans fit well, he thought, but he couldn't tell for sure. He walked out of the dressing room and over to the mirror. He had to admit they were cute. The jeans really defined his legs and made his butt really stand out. He turned back and forth, leaned to one side, then the other. He was still trying out various poses when Deb came in. My, those look great, she said, smiling at how Rob was preening. I picked out some more for you, though, and handed Rob maybe 6 more pairs of jeans, all sorts. Some were faded, some had side zippers, some ultra-low rise, some had glitter on them. He tried on all of them, and each time walked out to the mirror for some posing. He had to admit it was fun. Deb enthusiastically commented on each one, except for a couple she thought were too provocative for a girl his age. The salesgirl, who he found out was named Chrissy, also joined in, making suggestions and comments. Chrissy suggested a couple of skirts for Rob to try on, but he ducked that. Just something he wasn't ready for. Finally, Rob decided on 3 pairs of jeans. Then he started to go through tops, looking at tees, tanks, long-sleeve tunics, sleeveless blouses, sweaters, everything. After maybe another hour, Rob decided on 5 tops that he really liked. As Chrissy was totaling up the purchase, she said to Rob, I think it's just so cool that you and your mom shop so well together. Rob laughed a little bit and agreed, adding that they were very close. What school do you go to? Chrissy asked. Fremont High, Rob blurted out quickly. Fremont was Josh and Jen's school. Awesome, she said, I went there too. Frosh, right? Chrissy asked. Yeah, answered Rob. I figured, Chrissy said with some satisfaction. You'll love it. It's a lot bigger than middle school, but you'll have fun. Yeah, I'm scared, but it'll be interesting, Rob said truthfully. So why aren't you in school today? Asked Chrissy, puzzled. Rob was stumped for a second, and then just said, I'm sick today. Chrissy laughed. Well, nothing makes you feel better than a shopping day. Rob actually agreed. On leaving the juniors department, Rob and Deb spent a couple more hours buying other things, 3 pairs of shoes, belts, all sort of thing. The hardest for him was buying panties and bras. He was reluctant to even enter the lingerie section. It somehow just seemed wrong for him to go pawing around that department. But Deb convinced him it wasn't just okay, but a necessity. Once in, Rob was entranced by the options. He'd never really thought about it before, but the range of panties available was just tremendous. He found sexy string bikinis, comfortable briefs, sexy boy shorts, thongs, which Deb discouraged. They even had some special low-rise bikinis made especially for low-rise jeans. He ended up buying to his, as well as Deb's, surprise about a dozen pairs, plus 3 bras. By this time, both girls were burdened under clothing they had purchased, with each carrying maybe 3 bags. Go for lunch? Deb asked. Rob answered yes, another good idea from Deb. They hadn't taken 2 steps, though, when Rob heard a voice call out, Hey Debbie. It was Susan Portner, who lived 2 doors down from Rob and Deb. Doing a bit of shopping, I see, she joked. Yeah, we just needed to catch up and get some stuff, Deb answered. Susan looked at Rob, a bit puzzled. And who is your adorable friend? Susan asked. Rob cringed. He and Deb hung out a lot with the Portners. Their kids were about the same age, and went to the same schools. Rob even played in a basketball league with Jim Portner, Sue's husband. Oh, he's. Deb stumbled. Susan was looking perplexed. I mean, SHE is my niece. Pause. My niece Robbie. Well, I am so glad to meet you, Robbie, said Susan. I'm Mrs. Portner, I live near your Aunt Debbie. Rob was petrified. Oh, okay. He finally said. Hi. Susan stared at Rob. You know, Debbie, Robbie looks so much like Robert, it's amazing. Yeah, I guess they do, said Deb. The family resemblance is amazing. Hey, Susan said, I wanted to tell you that we are having a pool party on Saturday, which was the next day. You and Rob and the kids just have to be there. And Robbie should come too. Thanks. Deb said, but I don't think we. Nonsense, said Susan. I want you there. And besides, I think Robbie wouldn't mind meeting the boys. Oh God, thought Rob. The boys, Matt and Tyler, Susan's kids, were 15 and 17, respectively. They were troublemakers for sure, always into something. And they were also incredibly cute, Rob remembered. He'd never actually thought about it before, but they were. Okay, we'll be there. Rob heard Deb say just then. Rob shot Deb dagger eyes. But it was too late. The commitment had been made. And with the Portners, he knew, once you said yes, there was no changing your mind. Still, he decided he just wouldn't go. Lunch was uneventful. Rob wasn't very hungry, so he just ordered a small salad, although Debbie ate a hamburger. He had never thought much about it before, but it was amazing that Debbie kept such a slim shape. He wondered briefly whether he'd be able to eat burgers and keep his shape, or whether it would make him balloon. He certainly didn't want to be a girl, of course, but even less a fat girl. After lunch, they trundled back over to the car and went to Dr. Mann's office. Walking in, the receptionist cheerily asked Deb, "Do you and your daughter have an appointment today?" Deb quickly corrected her, "Yes, but this is not my daughter, it's my husband, Rob." The receptionist was momentarily quiet, looking embarrassed. "Oh, yes, I know. I am so sorry." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm new just today." "I am sorry." "Yes, Dr. Mann is expecting you. If she, I mean he, I mean she, if both of you can just sit down a second, Dr. Mann will be right with you." They sat down. Rob was feeling more than a little nervous, and it wasn't helping that there was a teenage boy sitting across the room who was staring at her like she was a TV show. He didn't seem appalled, though. He probably hadn't heard the receptionist, he probably was just lusting, Rob joked to himself. It actually made him feel good, he realized to himself. After about 10 minutes, the nurse called for Deb. They both got up, but the nurse motioned for Rob to wait a little longer while Deb went in. That was a bit perplexing to Rob after all, wasn't he the patient? Another 15 minutes passed, then the nurse came in for Rob. He went with her to an examination room, where she asked Rob to take off all his clothes except for his panties and bra. She then weighed him, checked his blood pressure, his temperature, and some other stuff. She then asked him to lie down, and she examined his body, with particular attention to his girl parts down there and his breasts. He found it very uncomfortable and embarrassing, but if it would help cure him, he wouldn't object. The nurse then gave Rob a gown, one of those that covered only the front, and walked her over to a much larger room, with an examination table in the center, and lots of chairs and unusual equipment. Dr. Mann came in, with Deb. "Hi there, Robert. How are we feeling today?" "Well, what do you think?" Rob replied testily. Dr. Mann didn't reply, he was already deep into reading the chart. The door opened, and about 6 other people came in, most, but not all, wearing white coats. "I'd like you to meet some of the people who have been working with me on resolving your problem," Mann said. Among them was a DNA specialist from the University of Chicago, a biologist from Yale, a couple of people from the National Institutes of Health, a gynecologist, and a chemist. "Okay, here's what we know," he began. "As we concluded the other day, you are physically a female. DNA testing has now shown that you are female down to the genetic level. Your levels of estrogen and other female hormones are about what you'd expect of a girl just past puberty, and your testosterone levels are in fact lower than one would expect in such an individual. Tests of your reproductive system show it to be likely fully functional. In other words, you will have periods, and you will be able to have babies." "Oh, good," Rob said. Dr. Mann didn't react to the sarcasm. "What is odd," said one of the others, "the chemist's dash is that there are several substances in your body that just shouldn't be there. For instance, we found chinomethionate, salicylazopyridine, allicler, and even trace levels of 1-amino-2, 4-dibromoanthraquinone in your blood." Rob felt stupid. He had absolutely no idea what the man had said. The chemist saw Rob's empty look and explained those are all very bad things. "They could be fatal. They probably should have killed you." "Yes, I know what fatal means," Rob snapped. He was feeling just a little out of this depth though. "So how can you get me back to normal?" Rob asked. There was a pause. "It's not that easy," Dr. Mann cautioned. We just don't know yet how to approach this." "We've all discussed this," he said, pointing to Deb as well as all the doctors, "and we've worked out a several-point strategy. Dr. Klein of NIH will be launching a research effort. This is a unique case and they want to get on top of it. Meanwhile, Dr. Stevens will be continuing to monitor you. A nurse will come by your house every day for the first week to administer tests until we establish a routine." Rob noticed the use of the term first week, and gulped, but didn't say anything. "We'd also like you to talk to Dr. Prius regularly. Dr. Prius is a psychologist. This is a pretty big change for you emotionally, and we want to make sure you go through it with proper professional help." Big change, Rob thought. There's the understatement of the year. Dr. Prius stepped forward. She was a rather nice-looking woman, maybe in her late 30s, with a shapely body that was hardly concealed by the professional skirt suit she was wearing. "Maybe we can talk tomorrow in my office?" she asked. "Yeah, okay," Rob said. He wanted to sound like he wasn't overanxious. He ended up sounding like a sullen adolescent. "One thing missing," Rob said. "Has anyone thought to follow up with the driver of the truck that sprayed me?" Rob was a little embarrassed he hadn't done that yet, but then again he'd been fairly distracted. "We did get his number." The doctors looked around uncomfortably. "Yes," said one of the group, identifying himself just as being with the federal government. "We are pursuing that. But the driver can't be found, and the organization he worked for says the compound wasn't dangerous." "Well, can't you get some of it to test?" Rob asked impatiently. "It's complicated, Rob," said the government man. "It's the Defense Department. But we are trying." After leaving the office, Rob and Deb got back into the car. "Well, it does look like they are trying, doesn't it, Rob?" "Yeah, but they don't know where to start," Rob responded. "They don't have a clue." With that, Rob started to cry, putting his hands over his face. Deb leaned over and hugged him. "Robbie, Robbie," she said. Somehow the feminine form of the name seemed appropriate. "We will get through this." When they arrived back at home, Jen and Josh were already there. Josh looked nervous and simply said, "Hi, Dad." Jen was more enthusiastic. "So what did you buy, sister?" she asked. Rob responded in kind. He had to admit, excited about his clothes purchases and was glad to be able to show them to someone. Jen oohed and awed at it all. "Can I borrow some of these?" she asked. Rob laughed. "Sure, Jen. Why not?" Jason was stone-faced at this girl fest. "Dad, forget about the damn clothes." "What did the doctor say?" "Not much, Jason. More tests, I think." He paused. "It looked like I'll be like this for a little while." Jason was silent and glum. Jen perked up, though. "Hey, Dad," she said. "Don't worry. This'll be fun." "I don't believe you too," Jason said, leaving the house. "My dad is turning gay, and you say it's fun." "Don't worry about him," said Deb. "He'll come around." "By the way, Jen," she said, "all three of you kids are invited to the Portners tomorrow for a pool party." Neither of them noticed anything wrong with grouping Rob as one of the kids. "Yay," said Jen. "I'll get to show my new sister off." She's your cousin from now on, okay?" corrected Deb. "Let's go pick out swimsuits," said Jen to Rob. "I've got some that will look awesome on you." Somehow, now she didn't mind sharing clothes anymore. Rob was hesitant, but didn't want to puncture her enthusiasm. "Okay, I will look, but I am not going to the party." "I will make you," said Jen, dragging Robbie into her room. Jen, Rob's daughter, was thrilled about being invited to a pool party, and that her Rob is invited too. "Let's go pick out swimsuits," said Jen to Rob. "I've got some that will look awesome on you." Rob was hesitant, but didn't want to puncture her enthusiasm. "Okay, I will look, but I am not going to the party." "I will make you," said Jen, dragging Robbie into her room. He sort of rolled his eyes at Deb, who just smiled. They both knew that Rob couldn't refuse Jen anything, not as a dad, and not, apparently, as a sister. "Okay, there's going to be lots of people there from school, so I want something super cool," she said. Jen went to her dresser and pulled out maybe 10 swimsuits. Rob was astonished. He had no idea she had built up such a collection. No wonder the clothing bills had been so high. "I could go one-piece," Jen said, putting a light blue one-piece suit up to her body. "But I think two-piece will really make us stand out." Of course, standing out was the last thing in the world Rob wanted. "This is it, perfect," Jen announced, putting her hands on a black bikini set. It had a tiny triangle top, and the bottom was equally minuscule, with the front and back tied together with strings. "No way I'd let you wear that," Rob said instinctively. "Oh, come on sis," Jen said, ignoring Rob's attempt to exert authority. "And I have one for you too. It'll be a kick." Jen pulled out a second bikini. This one was black also, with a little white trim. It wasn't quite as skimpy as the other. Instead of a string, it had a thin strap. But it was far less than Rob had any intention of wearing. But he didn't want to argue. "Whatever," he said. He figured he'd just stay home tomorrow anyway. Just then they heard the doorbell. "Jen! It's Mindy!" Debbie yelled from the living room. "Oh crap!" Jen said. "I forgot that she was coming over." Rob remembered Mindy, a friend of Jen's from school. The door opened, and Mindy came in. "Hey, Jens," she said. "Hey, Mindy's." Mindy looked at Rob closely. He sensed he was being inspected from top to bottom. This is my cousin Robbie," Jen said. "She's cool." Rob said hello. So where are you from? Mindy asked. Out of state, Rob answered, realizing how stupid that sounded. Indiana. Indianapolis, he added, desperately making things up. Awesome, Mindy said. My brother is at Butler. Rob had never heard of Butler, he just nodded. Mindy smiled. Apparently he had passed the test. From the living room, Rob heard Debbie yell, "Girls! I'm going to the store. Hold down the fort, okay?" "Okay," Jen yelled back. Mindy smiled again. Is your dad around? Not really, Jen answered, barely holding back a laugh. Good, said Mindy. I need a smoke. Mindy grabbed her purse and walked out to the back porch. Jen and Rob followed. Mindy pulled out a pack of Salem's and lit up. Want one? Mindy said, offering cigarettes to Jen and Rob. Sure, said Jen. Rob was horrified. Jen lit up. Damn, I needed that, she said. Jennifer! Rob screamed. You smoke? Uh-huh, she said sheepishly. What's wrong? Are you the morality patrol or something? Mindy mocked. I just didn't know. What are you, her mom? Mindy asked. No, I am certainly not, answered Rob. Hey, Jens, Mindy said, turning away from Rob. Remember that time we needed to buy some cigs and you got the money from your dad? It was amazing. You said you needed money. And he just gave it to you. No questions. Jesus, do you totally have him wrapped around your little finger? Rob sat quietly. Mindy went on. I can't believe how stupid he was. Jen jumped in. He is not stupid. Maybe, but you are always bragging about how you can get whatever you want from him. You do? Inserted Rob. She does, said Mindy. Let's talk about something else, Jen said in desperation. Mindy gave her a dirty look but didn't say anything. So, do you have a boyfriend, Robbie? Mindy asked. No. I don't, Rob answered. You don't now? But you did? Or you haven't had any? Robbie didn't answer. Mindy broke into a grin. You've never had a boyfriend? That's so cute. Rob found it rather patronizing. Like he couldn't attract a boy if he wanted to. I suppose you have had one? Rob said, not knowing what else to say. Mindy was quick to answer. Duh, of course. Last summer Jen and I were both had boyfriends. Jen, remember the time we all went over to the lake? You were like so all over Seth that night. Mindy, I don't think. Jen protested. Oh, come on. It was so cool. Turns out Jen went all the way with Seth that night right on the sand. Mindy, said Jen. Jen, said Rob. So you are a virgin? Mindy asked Rob, rather bluntly. I'm only 15, Rob answered. I think that's rather young too. I did it when I was 13, Mindy said proudly. All eyes then turned to Jen. Well, that time at the lake was my first, she said, trying to redeem herself. Unless you count oral sex, Mindy corrected. You said you did that starting 2 years ago. Jen. I never really. I mean, I thought. Rob sputtered. Hey Robbie, don't be so shocked. Oral is the best. Once you've done it, you'll. Let's go to the mall, Jen said, trying to stop this conversational catastrophe. Mindy reluctantly agreed. Hey, Robbie, want to join us? No, I went this morning, Rob said. Mindy laughed. Not to shop, silly. We boy watch. Before Rob knew it, she was in the back seat of Mindy's car. Mindy was a crazy driver. She was speeding and ran at least 2 lights that he saw. He was relieved when they got to the mall, all in one piece. They went into the main entrance, where the place was packed with teenagers. Quite a few boys were positioned right at the front door, right where they could see who walked in. The stares were obvious as the 3 girls walked in. Rob was pretty uncomfortable at first. But at the same time, he was feeling a sense of satisfaction since he seemed to be attracting way more attention than Mindy. Served her right, he thought. They went over to the food court and each ordered the same thing, Diet Cokes. Suddenly, Mindy said, "Look there," and motioned over to a boy, about 16, with black curly hair. Jen and Mindy both started whispering at that point, and giggled. Rob wasn't impressed, but then Jen pointed out an older boy, about 18, with a goatee. Rob couldn't help but admit he was cute, and smiled appreciatively. Jen stared a long time at her dad when he did that, but then laughed it off. For the next hour, the 3 of them were huddled together like that, whispering, giggling, and generally having a good time. Once in a while a boy would walk up and say, "Hi," and even sit down next to them for a while. The girls were just in tease mode, however, and none made it very far. At one point Rob saw a middle-aged guy, about Rob's real age, walk by. The guy had a wandering eye, and gave Rob a good, long stare. Rob couldn't help but have some fun, so he stared back at him, and licked his lips just a little with his best sense of smile. The guy was so distracted he tripped over his own feet, and almost fell to the floor. "You're pretty good at that for a virgin," remarked Mindy, and all 3 started giggling uncontrollably once again. Rob had to admit he had a good time. Despite his distaste of Mindy as a father, knowing what he knew now about her, he'd prohibit Jen from seeing her as a teenage girl. He thought she was cool. It was about 10 p.m. when Mindy dropped the other 2 girls off at home. They talked for a while in Jen's bedroom, and then changed into their matching t-shirts and went to bed. Deb woke Rob up early the next morning with a gentle shake. "Come on, sweetie, you can't sleep all day." "Aw, Mom, it's Saturday." "I want to sleep," Rob muttered. Deb ignored the mom reference. He was half asleep after all. "We have to be at the psychiatrist's office at 10, remember?" No, he hadn't remembered. And right now, that was the last thing he wanted to do. Why waste time with a shrink, just fix my body, he thought. Basically, he just didn't want to be all touchy-feely with someone. There was a lot going on in his head he hadn't figured out himself yet, and he didn't want someone else probing around. But his protestations were to no avail. Deb said he had no choice. They had agreed to see Dr. Prius, and they were going to go. End of discussion. Rob got dressed quickly, putting on one of his new jeans, and a new blouse, white with short cap sleeves. He brushed his hair quickly. Looking at his face, he wondered whether he should be putting on makeup. He knew he was good-looking even without it, but makeup would make his face look more complete. He wondered whether Jen could help him on that. It was a short ride to the doctor's office. Rob was used to not driving by now. In fact, after being in the back seat last night, he was glad to be in the front at all. Walking in, they saw Dr. Prius immediately. It being Saturday, there was no receptionist, no paperwork. He just walked just in. Deb stayed in the waiting room. "Hi, Rob. Glad you could make it." "Hi," Rob said, without feeling. After some further preliminaries, Dr. Prius explained that she first wanted to find out to what extent the sudden change had affected him. His general health was good, but were there other problems? Depression? Insomnia? Anxiety? He didn't have any of these. Okay. And has your mental state changed at all? Do you look at things differently? Rob said no, he was still the Rob he was before. Dr. Prius explained that transsexuals often felt more emotional and moody, and often experienced other mental changes when they were undergoing hormone therapy, so she thought he might be too. Rob admitted he had cried a couple of times, but otherwise he was still a guy. Dr. Prius pressed some more. Is there anything you like about being a girl? Not really, Rob answered quickly. I hate this. Dr. Prius showed no reaction. Do you think of yourself as a he or she? A he, of course, he answered. Are you as attracted to females to the same extent as before? Any attraction to males? No, I'm perfectly the same. Rob didn't want to admit about the changes here, he just didn't trust her. And he certainly wasn't going to let this woman think he was gay. Do you mind if I show you some things? With that, she reached under her desk and pulled out some Playboy magazines. I want you to look through these and tell me what your reaction is. Rob felt a little weird about this, although it was hard to say whether it'd be weirder for this woman to be giving a man porn to read in her office, or giving a 15-year-old girl porn to read. But he was game. He flipped through the pages one by one. He actually remembered this issue, it was a recent one, and he had really loved the girls that month. Yet, today he had absolutely no reaction. Nothing at all. Except once or twice he found himself looking at one of the girls' hair, wondering if bangs would look good on him. He also started wondering whether their breasts had been enhanced. He was quite happy with his, but the ones in the magazine looked too perfect. So? What do you think? Asked Dr. Prius. Oh, nice. I like it, said Rob. Just nice, said Dr. Prius. Rob knew he had to be convincing hot. My gosh, they are hot, he said. How so? She asked. You know, they are naked and everything, he stumbled on. Of course, since I'm a guy, that turns me on. Dr. Prius took notes. Dr. Prius smiled and took some more notes. Do you like multiple choice tests? She asked. Rob felt he was back in school. Sure, he said. Well, there's something called the Coggiati test for combined gender identity and transsexuality inventory. It measures, roughly, whether a person is oriented toward being a female or a male. That test is really made for candidates for sex reassignment surgery, but I've made a version that better fits your situation. That I'd like you to take, she said, sitting him down in front of a computer. He didn't really have a chance to object, so he went along and started answering questions. You are at a meeting. Everyone at the meeting is the same sex as you. The leader of the meeting announces that it's time for hugs all around. How do you feel about this? You are alone enjoying some erotic materials of your own preference. What are they? You acquire an incredible power. You can change your sex whenever you wish, and the change is absolutely perfect in either form, male or female. What would you most likely do with such a power? Suddenly, somebody throws a ball at you. What is the most realistic outcome? Which do you feel is most desirable to possess, compassion, love, friendship, respect, or power? You are trying to describe the complex shape of an unfamiliar object to someone. You are not using your hands, and must rely on words alone. How easy is it for you to convey the shape accurately? You are told that something you said probably bothered somebody. What is your reaction? A stranger is happy at meeting you. He wants to give you a hug. How do you honestly feel about this? The test went on with dozens more questions. The intent of some was obvious, others not so much. Rob tried not to lie, but whenever he wasn't sure, he gave the answer that he thought was more masculine. When he was finished, he told Dr. Prius, confident that the test as he answered it would show him to still be a normal red-blooded male. Dr. Prius looked it over carefully, and then walked over to her desk. "How'd I do?" asked Rob confidently. "Nothing really surprising," she answered. "You are in a middle category. Basically, you can be categorized as either an effeminate male or maybe a masculine female." Rob started to object, but thought better of it. "The test means nothing," he said to himself. "I am still a male, and nothing is going to change that." But, at the same time, he knew things were happening to him mentally that he didn't understand. He was terrified. That ended the first session with Dr. Prius. He didn't talk much to Deb about the session on the way home, and she didn't ask. As Deb pulled up in the driveway at the house after the visit the psychiatrist, she remembered that the pool party was starting. "Mrs. Portner said you guys should come over by noon," she said to Rob. "Jen and Josh are probably already there, so you should hurry to catch up to them." "I am not going," Rob said. He realized he sounded a little pouty, but he had to put his foot down. Besides, he was a little ticked off that Deb had referred to his neighbor as Mrs. Portner. She had been Susan to him for years, so why so formal now? "Aw, sweetie, it'll be fun, and Jen was really looking forward to showing you off." Rob just stared. He started to say something, but didn't. He simply got out of the car and walked inside. Deb was confused, and followed Rob back into the house. "Young lady," she said. "I am not a young lady." Rob screamed back. "Well, you are acting like one right now. You really are acting like Jen at her worst, I swear. Now what in the world caused that fit of yours? Did it ever occur to you that I do not want to be shown off?" It hadn't. Deb instantly saw her mistake, but said nothing. "I just want to stay here," Rob said. "Okay, Robbie. I'll head over by myself." When Deb had left, he plopped himself on the couch, figuring to watch the news. CNN had a story about the rise in the stock market, which was caused by something that happened in another, well, the price of the things that. It made no sense to Rob. Maybe it was all the excitement, but he was having a hard time understanding it all. He turned on Fox News. That was a little bit more fun. They had a feature on President Bush, who was trying to get his secretary of something or other, some guy who ran the Healthiness and Humane Services place. Whoever it was, he looked totally hot. Rob always liked suits, he thought. There's something about a man in a suit. He wondered what else was on. There had to be a music channel somewhere, he thought. He was flipping around the channels on the remote when the door opened. "Sorry, I didn't know anyone was here," he heard a male voice say. Turning around, she saw an older boy, she'd guess about 18, standing there in jeans, no shirt. "Hi. I'm Thomas." Hi," Rob stammered. He had the most perfect muscles Rob had ever seen. He straightened up his hair. "I can go, I'm so sorry," he continued. "Josh said I could borrow his trunks and change here." "Okay," Robbie said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Are you his sister?" the guy asked. She laughed. "No. I'm Robbie, his cousin." "Oh, okay. Is that his room?" he asked. "Yeah," Robbie answered. "Go ahead." He went in the room, not closing the door. Robbie couldn't help but see him. She told herself that it was just a guy, just like he was. She wasn't gay, so this was no big deal, but she couldn't deny that her neck was craning like a giraffe to see him change. She got some glimpses, a leg, an arm, and then a side view. Then he came out, and she turned her head away. "So, why aren't you at the party?" he asked. "Not interested," she said. "Neither am I," he whispered, like it was a secret. "But I got talked into it." "Well, no one talks me into anything," Robbie said proudly, like an 8-year-old proclaiming her independence. "I see," he said, not taking her seriously. "Say, how old are you?" 16, she answered, not knowing why she lied. "I was just watching the news." He laughed. That looks like MTV on." Robbie was horrified. She forgot she had turned off Fox. "Well, I don't usually watch that," she said. "That's okay," he said. "But I watch CNN mostly." "Sounds interesting," she said, lying. "Oh, it is. Just yesterday there was a story about the economic situation in Bangladesh, where blah, blah, blah." He went on, and Robbie completely lost the thread of what he was saying. But she was still completely engrossed in watching him talk. She thought, if she was really a girl, this is the type of boy she'd be interested in. He was educated, he was smart, he was cute, he was... "So what do you think?" she heard him say. It's really something, I mean all those people, who, well, you know," she said. He laughed. "Well, I'll teach you current events someday, okay?" "Okay," she said puppy dog-like. "Well, gotta go," he said. "Sure you don't want to come to the party?" he asked. She nodded no. And he left. She was glad that he was gone. He was weird, she thought. And a distraction from the stuff she was doing. He was cute, though, she thought. She'd like him if she was a girl. Suddenly Robbie stopped. Frozen. She realized that at some point in the conversation he had started thinking of himself as a she. Dr. Prius did ask whether she thought of herself as a girl. That was one of the few questions he had answered truthfully. But now, she realized the answer had changed. She tried to rechange his mindset. "I'm Rob," she said to herself. Rob is a guy. He is still a guy. But whenever the word guy went through her mind, a picture of Thomas popped up. Or a picture of her wearing boys' clothes and looking ridiculous. It just wasn't going to work. The idea of her being a guy just seemed weird. Just then the door opened again, and there was Mindy and Jen. "Hi," they said deviously. "Hi," Robbie said, trying to look bored. "We think you should come over to the party," they said. Robbie looked quizzical. Mindy and Jen almost burst out their secret together. "Because there's a boy there that has ever got the hots for you," they said, practically singing the news. She tried to look unfazed, but his face turned red. "And you like him too," Mindy announced. "I do not," she said. "Do too." "Do not." "Do too." Finally, Jen put a stop to this. "Duh. I mean, Robbie, you are going to the pool party if we have to force you." They tackled her and pinned her to the bed. Robbie, who once probably weighed more than both of them combined, was helpless. "Okay," she said. "I'll go." They gave a little cheer. "Okay, put this on, okay?" It was the black bikini. The other day, Robbie was appalled at the idea of wearing it. But now it seemed fun. She actually wanted to do it. She stripped in front of the girls. Again, that didn't seem strange to her. Jen looked a little disconcerted. This was still her father after all, and turned away. Mindy, being Mindy, wasn't fazed at all. "You've got a totally awesome bod," she said. "You won't be a virgin for long, I can tell you that." "Mindy," yelped out Jen, appalled. Robbie remained quiet, but red as a beet. When Robbie was finished changing, all three girls walked over next door. It was a crowd affair. Lots of kids from Jen's school, and lots of grown-ups as well. It really looked like fun. They went over to get something to drink. Robbie grabbed a beer. "And what do you think you are doing, little one?" said a voice nearby. It was Mrs. Portner. Sorry," Robbie said. "I had forgotten." "Forgotten you are 15? Mrs. Portner said, shaking her head. "Look, we've got lots of sodas, stick to that, okay?" "Yes, ma'am," Robbie said. It was weird. Here was a woman whom she had had drinks with for years, heck, she had gotten drunk with on many occasions, and now she wasn't allowed to have a beer at her house. "Nice try, Robs," Mindy said, having watched the whole thing. "Oh, shut up," Robbie said, petulantly. "Let's mingle," Mindy said, suddenly changing the subject. With that, she pulled Robbie by the arm halfway across the yard, and right in front of a group of boys. "Oh, hi," Mindy said, putting on her sweet voice. "Have you met Robbie yet?" "Hi," they all said, introducing themselves. Robbie noticed that practically all of them were staring at her body like they had X-ray vision. It was uncomfortable, but fun at the same time. All but one. She looked more closely. It was Josh. Why, are you wearing that?" he spit out finally. Robbie had no answer. Mindy, however, had one as usual. "Because it's sexy as hell," she said. "Are you gay?" Jason said to Robbie, accusingly. Mindy plowed on. "Does she look like a dyke to you, Jason?" "I don't think so," she said. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone stared at everyone else. No one but Robbie and maybe Jason knew what was going on. "I'm sorry, Jason," Robbie stammered. "Don't apologize, sweetheart," Mindy said. "Yeah, sweetheart," Jason mocked. "Don't apologize. Be as sexy as you want to be. 'Cause you are a girl, aren't you?" With that he walked off. More silence. Then she heard, "I'll go beat him up if you want me to." It was Thomas. He had heard the commotion and walked over in case there was trouble. It was totally unnecessary, of course, but Robbie couldn't help but think it was sweet. He was really a nice guy, she thought. "Let's get some sodas," he said, taking her hand in his and leading her away. Thomas poured out a Coke for Robbie. She kind of liked that he was taking care of her. It was weird to be on the other side of the gallantry wagon, but it was nice. She thanked him, and the two stood next to each other in silence for a minute or two. The Robbie realized he was nervous. The poor guy was nervous. He kept looking at Robbie's bikini top, then looked away, and then snuck a peek, then looked away. "Do you like it?" Robbie asked mischievously. "Yeah, it's a great party," Tom answered. He was pretty clueless too, Robbie figured. "Hey, let's mingle a little," Tom suddenly suggested. Robbie was vaguely disappointed. She didn't know what to expect really, but she had hoped to talk alone with Thomas some more. Thomas led Robbie over to a group of grown-ups who were in a heated discussion about something. Cap gains reductions will never affect the existing capital stock, and will only marginally affect investment. She heard Jim Portner, his neighbor, argue. "Oh God. Jim had been making that same old argument for almost 10 years. And Rob had consistently shot it down. He talked big, but the man really knew nothing about tax policy. A couple of the other adults tried to take him on raising points about deductions, GNP levels, etc. But none were able to stump him. They just didn't understand it well enough. Finally, Robbie could not take it anymore. Mr. Portner, she said. Jesus God, why did she have to sound so deferential? You're Deb and Rob's niece, aren't you? Jim answered. I am, yes. I had a question about what you said. Anything, sweetie. I'll be glad to explain whatever you want. His condescension was unbearable. She couldn't wait to tear his argument apart. Well, when the capital gain is made, it is on stuff like stocks and things that people buy, right? She must be nervous, she thought. Yes, honey. A capital gain is a special kind of tax. But won't people not put their money in stuff like that, if there is a capital thingy would make them not do that, right? Well, it's very complicated, sweetie, but it doesn't work that way. This was frustrating. She knew what she wanted to say, but couldn't say it. No. It does. Really? I read that the Chicago Federals did a status, that they added up a whole bunch of numbers and stuff, and that the computer said that the capital thingy was a bad thing. She knew she was sounding like an idiot. Jim didn't really answer, he just smiled. Mrs. Portner stepped in at that point and said to the group, "Oh my! Isn't she a smart one? I bet she's going to be trouble someday." No. Robbie protested. I know this stuff. If the government guys, take money, it's, not nice, and people will get all hurt and stuff. And everyone will be all unhappy because they don't have money and stuff to buy things that they want to buy, Everyone laughed. You are right, said Jim. Never argue with female logic, he announced to the group. You will never win. She wanted to slap him so bad. Thomas mercifully stopped the exchange, grabbing Robbie by the hand and practically dragging her away. They went inside the house and sat down on a sofa in the living room. You're a strange girl, I have to say, blurted out Thomas. Robbie looked at him quizzically. I never would have figured you to have opinions on taxes. Well, is that a problem? Robbie asked. She didn't know whether she was offended or whether she really worried whether it was a turn-off. No problem, Tom answered without hesitation, it's kind of cool. Robbie seemed pleased. On impulse, Robbie reached over and kissed Thomas on the cheek. He was startled, not really expecting that. You really are full of surprises, he said. I have more, Robbie said impishly. Well, she used to anyway, a voice interrupted. It was Josh. Josh. Robbie protested. Look, we were only. Hey, now just go. Thomas protested. Give us a sec, okay? Robbie asked. Josh and I need to talk. Tom was confused, remained silent. Josh and Robbie walked over to a private study and shut the door. Josh stared at Robbie. So my dad's kissing boys now? Robbie looked away. It's very complicated. She began. I bet, Josh said. Look, I know this must be hard, Robbie started to explain. But I'm still me, despite what everything looks like. My dad isn't a fag. Josh wasn't giving ground. Stop that, Robbie said. My dad doesn't wear bikinis and doesn't have a boyfriend. I don't. I mean, I didn't. I mean, please, Josh. She started to cry. Oh, Jesus Christ. Now Dad is bawling, Josh said. Poor little girl, crying like a baby. Robbie thought, did she really raise her son to be so cruel? Didn't he have any sensitivity? Then she realized Josh's entire self-image was based on being masculine, on being the fastest, the strongest, the toughest competitor. And that self-image was modeled on him, his father. But now Robbie's change of sex has made the whole self-image come tumbling down. I wish I could change back, Josh. I really do. But I don't know how. I wish I could believe you, Josh replied. But you seem to be having way too much fun. I am not, Josh, I am miserable. No, you enjoy this. No, I'm trying to fight all this, it's just too hard. You like being a girl. You do. I do not, I want to change back. I do. But you don't look miserable. Well, it's complicated. But really want to get back to normal. Dad? I want to ask just one question. I want you to answer honestly, okay? Okay, I will. Did you kiss Tom? Robbie was struck into silence. She did want to return to normal, but she couldn't deny kissing Tom. She looked painfully into Josh's face. He just stared back. Yes or no, he insisted. Yes, she said. Do you want to kiss him again? More silence. Josh shook his head and walked away. Seeing Josh walk out, Thomas came back in. Is everything okay? He asked. No, not really, but I can't talk about it, okay? She said, starting to cry a little bit. Thomas reached forward to hug her. Robbie hugged back briefly, then recoiled. No, she said. I won't accept this. Tom was confused. Won't accept what? Baby, how can I help? I don't know, she cried. Before she knew it, she was back in his arms, crying so hard she was shaking. It's okay, it'll be okay. Tom soothed. Robbie was quiet, burrowing deeper into Tom's embrace. Whatever it is, I'm on your side, okay? He said, no knowing what it could be. Thank you, Thomas, she said. Then, without thinking about it, she reached over and kissed him. Not a peck this time, but a full open-mouthed kiss. He kissed back. She kissed again, putting her tongue deep into his mouth. Before Robbie could compute what was going on, she and Thomas were intertwined. His hands felt her body, her legs, her arms, her back. She felt his strong arms and caressed his chest. His hands reached to her bikini top and slowly reached inside. When his fingertips touched her nipple, she felt like the pleasure center in her brain was just going to explode. He was impossible to resist, but she remembered what Josh had said. She knew if she wanted to return to normal, she couldn't do this. She broke away from Thomas. Stop that. Stop that. What in the hell are you doing? I don't do that. That is not me. Leave me alone. Don't mess with me. Tom was absolutely stunned. But Robbie. I know what you were doing, and I won't do it. You'll just have to find a real girl to play with. With that, she stomped out of the house, leaving Tom vastly confused. She ran across the patio area, not realizing or caring that one strap of her top was dangling loose. In a minute she was back at her own house, and ran to her Deb and Rob's bedroom. Fighting off tears, she tore off the bikini top and the string bikini bottom, tossing them on the floor. She then rummaged through his old clothing dresser and put on a pair of boxer shorts, a pair of slacks, and a button-down shirt. The clothing swam on her/him. She barely could walk across the room without tripping over the pants' legs. Joshua was in the living room, watching TV. Rob walked in front of the TV and yelled at him, "Are you happy, Josh?" "It's me, I'm a guy." "I'm no girl. I have guys' clothes on. I'm a fucking man, okay?" With that, she ripped off the shirt, buttons popping and falling to the floor. "But I have boobs, Josh. I have boobs. And I don't have a penis anymore, Josh. I have a pussy. I didn't ask for it, but I have one. But that doesn't change who I am." Josh stared at her. Suddenly, he had nothing but sympathy for this poor girl in front of him, naked from the waist up, wearing a grown man's pants. I'm sorry, Dad," he said, and got up and walked toward her. "Leave me alone," she screamed. "I don't want your male hands on me. I never want to be touched by a man ever again." She broke away from his grip and ran back to her bedroom. She sat on the floor, knees pushed up to her chin, and started rocking back and forth, crying uncontrollably. After several minutes had passed, Deb came into the room. "Rob, honey," she asked. "How are you?" Robbie just stared, not responding. "Hey, Rob, we'll get over this. We'll get you back being your old male self." Rob still didn't answer. "I love you, Rob," Deb finally said, caressing Robbie lightly on the shoulder. "I love you too, Mom," said Robbie. Deb was taken aback. "Honey, I'm your wife, remember?" Robbie looked back at her, confused. "Sweetie, how old are you?" 15, answered Robbie, hesitantly. "I mean before your accident." Robbie looked puzzled. "What accident?" "I'm okay, Mom." "So you've always been like this?" "I mean, you've always been my daughter?" "Of course. Unless I'm adopted." "Am I?" "No, sweetie, you are not." Deb stroked Robbie's hair gently, then slipped out of the room. "Can you get me my phone book, Josh? I need to call Dr. Prius." Robbie was confused, and a little bit pissed off. She woke up early on Monday morning, anxious to get to school. It had been a long and busy weekend, so much so that it had seemed forever since she'd been there. Not that she was the least interested in classes and studying and junk like that, but she was looking forward to hanging with her friends, and especially telling them about Tom, the cutest guy, 19 years old, that she had met at the pool party on Saturday. But before she even got dressed, her mom insisted that she go to the doctor instead. Someone named Dr. Prius or something like that. Mom had got it in her brain sometime over the weekend that Robbie was sick. She kept asking her real easy questions like how old she was, and her name, and all sort of stuff like that. And when she gave the answers, she'd just stare at her, and look real serious like, as if she'd given some crazy answer. She called the doctor several times Sunday, and then Mom made her stay in bed like all day long. It was so lame. To make things worse, even her sister Jen and her stupid brother Josh were all acting like she was sick, looking at her, and acting all comforting and stuff. Anyway, Mom finally dragged her out to see stupid Dr. Prius. Robbie dressed in her usual short denim miniskirt, with a tank and some sandals. She looked pretty good, she thought. Mom looked surprised again and asked whether she'd be more comfortable in jeans and a t-shirt. What was she, a nun or something? She icily told Mom that she wasn't stepping outside if she couldn't dress the way she wanted to. And she got her way. When she got to the doctor's office place, Dr. Prius said hi to Robbie, like they had met before. As if. Robbie just stared at her, letting her know that she wasn't fooled. How are you feeling today, Robbie? The doctor asked. I'm fine, Robbie answered. So can I go now? Then Dr. Prius asked her a bunch of the dumbest questions she'd ever heard. Did she like makeup? What kind of toys did she play with when she was little? What year was she born? What about boys? Then it got really weird when the doc asked whether she ever thought of herself as male rather than female. And no, Robbie said as sarcastically as possible. Then she sat her down to take some sort of test. Robbie answered them well, not all, since he got bored part way through. The doctor looked at her answers though, and didn't ask Robbie to do it over, so she guessed that she had gotten away with it. Finally, the doctor asked Robbie and her mom to sit down. Well, Deb, said Dr. Prius, it's clear that the physical transformation we saw last week has certainly now been followed by a mental transformation. Robbie had no idea what they were talking about. I'll pass my results over to the team today. This is actually consistent with some other information they are getting. Can you meet with them in a couple of hours? Of course, said Deborah. Oh, Robbie whined. We don't have to go to another doctor, do we? I'm afraid so, dear. Then, turning to Dr. Prius, she said, should we tell her? Or would that just upset her? Robbie hated it when grown-ups talked about her like that as if she wasn't there. I think it's critical that she know, Prius answered. We should reintroduce the old memories as soon as possible. Robbie? Dr. Prius said, turning to look at Robbie for the first time. By this time, though, Robbie was looking intently at her nails, and only looked up briefly from them. You've been in a terrible accident. Robbie looked blankly. And you lost your memory. It's hard to describe, but you are not what you think you are. Robbie sort of smiled, disbelieving. Your real name is Robert, Prius said. You are in your 40s, not 15. Robbie stuck her tongue out. Yuck, she said. I'm an old woman then. She laughed. No, continued the doctor. You are a man. Robbie looked puzzled, then smiled again. A guy? I am a guy? She started giggling. Like I had hair on my chest and in my nose? And a pee-pee. Ha! It's not funny, Robbie, said Deb. The doctor is saying something serious. Oh, yeah, right. Be careful, Mom. I might want to seduce you. Deb started to tell Robbie that she was her husband, but somehow it didn't seem right. So, am I going to get my penis back? Robbie asked mockingly. I'd really like to have one to play with. Robbie! Deb screamed. Do not ever talk that way. Robbie stopped that line of humor. She could tell when her mother was serious. Robbie, let me show you something, Dr. Prius said, taking advantage of the silence. She put a DVD into a player. After a few seconds up came an image of her office a few days earlier when Rob was first interviewed. Robbie sat in stunned silence as she, or at least someone in her body, claimed to be a guy and denied ever wanting to be a girl. Robbie didn't know what to think. You drugged me, she finally concluded. You gave me drugs or hypnotized me to say those things. Dr. Prius denied it, explaining that if there were drugs at work, they were making her think she was a girl. No way, repeated Robbie over and over again. No way. Dr. Prius knew that Robbie probably wouldn't be completely convinced for some time, if ever. But she had planted the seed in her mind, which was a necessary start. She then said goodbye to the pair, saying she'd see them at Dr. Mann's in a couple of hours. Deb and Robbie spent the time in between at lunch. Robbie was still a bit dazed and couldn't get the conversation out of her head. She found herself at one point staring at their waiter, wondering what it would be like to be in a body like his. What was it like to have a penis? Did men feel it hanging there? What exactly made it grow? What is it like to have facial hair? All of this was completely foreign to her. And, she realized, it was distasteful as well. Whatever Dr. Prius had said, she knew she was always all girl. She had never even been a tomboy. She always dressed just so, hated dirt, and had no interest in boys' things. If she had been a boy once, she figured, she was certainly a ridiculously gay one. Robbie, she heard her mother say. She looked up. Stop flirting with that waiter, but Christ's sake. I wasn't, she protested. This time it was true, although he was kinda cute, she thought. She hated being only 15. After finishing lunch, the two walked over to Dr. Mann's office. Robbie? Do you remember Dr. Mann? Deb asked. He had been their regular doctor ever since they had gotten married. Of course, Robbie said. He delivered me, silly. Deb was taken by how easily Robbie fit the reality into her new world. On arriving at Dr. Mann's, the receptionist greeted them warmly. Not wanting to make the same mistake she made last time when she called Robbie Deb's daughter, the receptionist made sure to say, "Glad to see you again, sir," addressing Robbie. Robbie frowned and turned away. The receptionist decided the situation was just too complicated for pleasantries. After a brief wait, Robbie was ushered into a waiting room, while Deb waited outside. Go ahead and take off your clothes, Rob, said the nurse, everything but your bra and panties. She hated this part. Dr. Mann was nice and all, but she just didn't like any man to see her in bra and panties. But she obeyed, taking off her skirt and tank top, and then climbing up on the little bed there. She wore panties with flowers on them, but her bra didn't match at all. That bothered her. Had she thought ahead, she would have made sure to wear something that matched. Dr. Mann came in shortly, and greeted Robbie as if nothing was wrong. So, you are missing school today, I hear, he said. Well, they tell me I don't go to school, snapped back Robbie. That's the advantage of being an old guy, she added. I guess so, said Dr. Mann. As they continued their small talk, he examined her body, at one point even pulling down her panties and feeling her girl parts. Robbie didn't like that at all, but knew wouldn't do it unless he had to. Okay, go ahead and get dressed now, and let's hear from the team, Dr. Mann said. She looked confused, but he explained that the team was a group of doctors that had been working on her case. You've no memory of meeting them before? Dr. Mann asked. She didn't answer. It rang a bell somewhere in her mind, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Robbie did remember the big room when she walked in. Her mother was already there, plus a lot of others, most wearing white coats, and one wearing a solidier's uniform. An older man got up first. He identified himself as a doctor with the National something or Thingy, but Robbie didn't catch it. We've got some news to report on your case, he said to Deb, barely looking at Robbie. We traced down the origin of the substance that came in contact with your husband. Robbie winced at the word husband, but didn't say anything. It is a compound developed by a Defense Advanced Research Lab. How it got out of the lab we don't know. The Defense Department says it all should have been locked up tight as a drum. But we did find the key people responsible for its development and testing, and that has given us quite a bit of insight into what's happened to your daughter. I mean your husband. This is General Weston Nordhaus. He heads up the project, and is himself a Ph.D. in advanced chemicals. General? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The compound in question, known internally as EPF or enemy pacification and feminization, has been in development for some 10 years. It was meant as a way to neutralize enemy troops without violence. The core idea was to change enemy combatants' gender at the genetic level, turning them from male to female, and thus reducing their aggressiveness and strength. "That's dumb," Deb interrupted. "Female soldiers can be just as tough as male soldiers." "That's often true, ma'am," the general answered without hesitation. "But on average, a female will be less aggressive than a male." "Well, if someone did that to me, I'd sure be pretty aggressive," said one of the other male doctors. "Of course. And our testing on animals showed that to be true. So we concluded that decreasing average aggressiveness wasn't enough, we needed to do more to neutralize the enemy. Our answer was to add ingredients to make 3 more changes at the genetic level. They are: 1. First is age regression. The effect varies, but the target typically is regressed to approximately 1/3 his or her former age. 2. The second is intelligence. A smart enemy is a dangerous enemy. So the compound is made to reduce the target's intelligence quotient. That sort of thing is difficult to measure, but the net effect of a reduction of 20 to 30 IQ points. 3. Sex drive. Lastly, the sex drive of the target is enhanced to above-average levels. The idea is to reduce the target's mission focus, and to redirect attention toward, other interests. The room was silent. Dr. Mann jumped in. "Well, we certainly have seen gender change and age regression in our subject," he said. "What about intelligence?" Dr. Prius confirmed that there was a marked decrease in that area. Robbie was miffed, but helpless to protest. "What about sex drive?" Dr. Mann asked. "Any evidence of changes there?" None of the doctors really had hard evidence of that. All eyes looked over at Robbie. She squirmed a little, embarrassed at what they were thinking. "I've never had sex," she blurted out. She was terrified someone would ask some mortifying follow-up question when her mother stepped in. "She's boy crazy," she said flatly. Over the past several days, she had seen enough to reach that conclusion with certainty. She hated to say that of her own husband, but the facts were undeniable. "Well, your compound worked," Dr. Mann said to the general with a sarcastic tone. "Yes, it did. We're kind of pleased at that, though it's not the way we preferred." "General," said Dr. Prius. "You, am I sure, didn't develop this with only animal testing, did you?" The military man looked sheepish. "No. We did not. We had to use some human subjects. All volunteers from the enlisted ranks. And the results? As you might expect, they were mixed. This was an experimental program. Some saw no effect, some had variations of the effects. Robert is the first, it seems, to experience the results as planned. What happened to the others? Well, some transformed into grown females, some into young boys. Later, as we got the formula more precise, we did succeed in transforming some into young girls, but too often there were mental and physical problems." "Where are they now? Did you transform them back?" "No, we couldn't. But most are being taken care of. We found adoptive families for the children, and the grown women were given psychological help and financial aid to get started on their own. Some even have families now." A pause. "Some, I'm afraid, were lost. None died that I am aware of, but more than one ended up on the street as prostitutes, some became strippers and such. A consequence of the enhanced sex drive and lack of intelligence to gain other employment, I think." There was a silence in the room, as all eyes looked at Robbie. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she wasn't listening, but was looking at her face in a mirror and fixing her hair. The good news that General Nordhaus hasn't yet mentioned Deb, Dr. Prius interjected, is that they believe they now have an antidote. Deb's face lit up. Robbie was still confused. She didn't know what the word antidote meant and was afraid to ask. Well, it's not that clear, the general said, stopping the celebration short. We can't totally and permanently reverse the process, not yet. What we can do, he continued, is temporarily reverse one of the effects. What in the world does that mean? Deb asked, flustered. We have developed pills, he said, fumbling in his pocket to pull out several 3 bottles, which may reverse the effects of the compound for 12 to 24 hours. For a few days. He paused. Well, one of the effects. Or rather one effect. One effect, said several of the others in unison. Yes. We don't know how all the compounds interact, actually. And only one can be active in the human body at one time. That's the problem we've been working on. Only one. The gender change, the age regression, the sex drive enhancement, or the intelligence diminishment can be reversed. Only one at a time. The group paused to digest this new information. General Nordhaus explained further, one pill should let Robert can become male again, temporarily, but not reverse the aging. He will become a 15-year-old boy. Another would not change her gender, but she would regain her former age. Not very smart, with a strong sex drive. Or he can return to his original age, but he would be a somewhat dim, 40-year-old, highly promiscuous woman. Deb got the idea, and continued. He could also regain his intelligence, but he'd be a precocious 15-year-old, boy-crazy girl. Or he could normalize his sex drive, but he'd still be a somewhat vacant 15-year-old girl. And by normal, I assume that's normal for a guy. He'd be interested in women again? Robbie looked up, startled. Yes, said the general. Deb smiled. That's quite a choice, said Dr. Mann. Indeed, said Dr. Prius and Deb together. Deb then asked, but what of her memories? Will she remember who she was before all this happened? Do you have a pill to do that? The doctors paused for a moment. That effect is not from our compound, said the general, so I can't really say. Dr. Prius then jumped in. I'm pretty sure the memory loss is from trauma. She sees herself as a 15-year-old girl. I don't think the pills will change that. But time, and maybe reinforcement of old memories from you, could help. But will the pills hurt that? Won't they confuse her even more? The doctors all looked at each other. Finally, Dr. Mann spoke up. There's a lot we don't know here. The general then added, I'd strongly recommend starting the pills regardless. If nothing is done, the changes could set in permanently. All we need to do is decide on which pill, Dr. Prius said. Moreover, each of the pills should be taken somewhat regularly, added the general. Otherwise, the compound's effect will likely set in place permanently. That leaves young Miss Robbie with a big choice, I suppose, said Deb. Everyone looked at Robbie. Robbie looked up, wondering why they all were staring at her. Deb then asked the question they all wanted answered. Who do you want to be today, Robbie? Robbie and Deb drove home, together with 3 bottles of pills in Deb's purse. Each promised Robbie some hope, temporarily reversing one of the effects of the EPF chemical. Robbie, then Rob, had been exposed to gender change, age regression, diminished intelligence. But only one of them could be taken at a time. Making things even more complicated, Robbie still had not recovered her memories. She had been told who she really was, but still had no memories of being Robert. Deb didn't know what to do. In years past, she would lean on Robert to come up with the best answer in cases like this. But for the past few days, she had assumed the leadership role as Robbie became increasingly helpless. "Robbie?" Deb asked as the car sat at a stoplight. "What did you think about what the doctors said?" she asked. "I still don't really believe them," she answered. "I'm not a boy. And they aren't going to make me into one." "Robbie, but you were a man," Deb responded. "You saw the video." "Whatever," Robbie said, as she adjusted the hem of her skirt. "Can we go shopping now?" she asked. Deb didn't answer. On arriving home, Jen ran up to Robbie. "Sister! Yay! They didn't change you back." Robbie was actually glad to have someone on her side. She hugged Jen. It was like they were really sisters. Josh stood back. Robbie looked at him and noticed he seemed hurt. "They couldn't do anything?" said Josh. "Ask Mom," Robbie said. I didn't pay much attention. Deb decided it was best to fill in the kids on the situation without Robbie there. "Robbie, why don't you go over to Mindy's house for a little bit?" Robbie loved hanging out with Mindy, so she eagerly agreed. "Can I have some money to go to the mall with her?" Deb reluctantly agreed, handing over $100. It was weird for her to give money to Robbie since, as Robert, he had earned it all in the first place. That hadn't occurred to her before, actually. If this were to go on for a while, they'd have to face money problems. "Can I go too?" Jen asked, feeling a little jealous of her sister. Deb stared her down. They waited until Robbie bounced out of the room, then Deb filled them in on the situation. It took a while for it all to be absorbed. Then came the questions. "Josh, so they are still looking for a permanent solution?" "Yes." "Jen, she could be a grown woman just like that?" "Temporarily, yes." "Josh, but Dad could become a boy again?" "Yes, but a 15-year-old one." The questions went on for over an hour as they discussed the different possible permutations. Then Deb asked for ideas on what to do. "Let's let her decide," said Jen. "It's her body, after all." Deb wasn't so sure was Robbie really in a position to make rational decisions. Josh suggested that his dad should take the boy pill immediately. That was the most important. Deb put an end to the discussion, however, saying, "I need Robbie's help to have a chance. We need her brain power, so I'll give her that pill." End of discussion. Meanwhile, Robbie was with Mindy at the mall. She had gone through the $100 in perhaps the first half hour, buying a micro mini skirt from American Eagle, tops from Gap, some incredibly sexy undies from Forever 21, and a Diet Coke for dinner. She was going to buy some more stuff when she saw she was out of money. "Someone stole my cash," she said to Mindy. Robbie, I think you spent it," Mindy said. Robbie turned beet red. "I guess I did," she said, smiling sheepishly. "You seem different today," Mindy said. "You were sort of reserved the other day, but now you are, well, different." "Oh, that's just me," Robbie said, going through her bags. "Mom says I'm so unpredictable." Mindy didn't know that Robbie now considered Jen her mom. Robbie didn't remember ever thinking anything different. "Let's go to Old Navy," Robbie practically screamed. "I think they've got a sale there." Mindy went along, unable to resist the tidal wave of enthusiasm that Robbie had become. Somehow it didn't matter that Robbie had no money. Logic seemed to have no effect on her. After another hour spent at Old Navy, she didn't find much there, but did pick up some packs of cute anklet socks. Mindy and Robbie headed back home. "You got quite a haul tonight, Robs," Mindy said. Robbie looked at all the bags, and was thankful Mindy could drive. "Well," Robbie said with a grin, "it was a tough day for me." Tell me. What happened, Robs? Mindy asked. She always wanted to know everything. Well, she was a little embarrassed to say. My mom today, she said. Well, it's stupid. Oh God. Tell me. Mindy practically screamed. Mom said that I am a boy. Mindy was quiet. Probably the first time in her life she was quiet. Then she blurted out, a boy? I mean, a boy toy. She thinks I flirt with boys too much. She lied her precious little heart out. What else would she say? That her mom thought she was a guy? That there's a video of her saying she was a guy? That doctors were treating her like she was a mental case? Like that stuff wouldn't be all over the school in a minute. Ha. Mindy said. I thought you had something juicy. Robbie, you are a boy toy, admit it. Robbie grinned. Yeah, she was, and she loved it. Mindy pulled into Robbie's driveway and let her out. Robbie tried to sneak into the house, unnoticed, but it was impossible. There was her mom, Jen, and her dumb brother Joshua Wright in the living room waiting for her. You said you wouldn't be long, Deb said icily. And what are all those clothes? She demanded. Robbie decided to be defiant. After today, I needed to shop, okay? Josh had to break in. Mom, you know we have to give her the boy pill. We've got to change her back now. Now. Josh was getting desperate. Deb ignored Josh. She needed Robbie's mind, her intelligence right now more than anything else. Robbie, Deb said firmly. I'm sorry. None of that matters now. But I do need you to swallow this pill, she said. It will make you smart again. Robbie wrinkled her nose at Deb. Smart again? Like she was stupid now. Besides that, she didn't even want to be smart. She thought of the girls in school with glasses and no fashion sense who didn't get dates. Ugh. That's the last thing she wanted. I don't know, she said. Take it, please, Deb said. No, Robbie screamed as she flailed wildly at Deb's hand, making the bottles and the pills go flying all over the room. I don't want your dumb pills, she whined. There's nothing wrong with me. Why do you hate me so much? With that, she ran into the bathroom and slammed the door shut. What was wrong with everyone, she thought? She looked at herself in the mirror. It was the same old body she'd had for 15 years. Well, with a few new curves and bumps she developed recently. She loved her body and she knew boys loved it. Her mom, it finally occurred to her, was jealous. She took off her top and jeans, then her bra and panties. That's it. Mom is jealous. Like who wouldn't be? I can get more boys than she ever could, and she knows it. She then took off her bra. Her breasts were delicate and perfectly formed. She was proud of the girls. And couldn't wait to show them off to some lucky boy. She looked closely at her below-the-waist girl parts. They were only lightly covered, though she had never trimmed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Robbie grabbed a towel to cover herself. Robbie? Can we talk? It was Jen. Jen was cool, Robbie thought. They were about the same age, odd, since they weren't twins, but Robbie was never any good at math, and they told each other everything. Sure, Robbie said. You know I love having you as my sister, Jen said quietly. Robbie tightened the towel around her and nodded. But Mom's right. You really should take one of those pills. I'm no boy, you know that, right? Robbie said. No, Jen replied, looking at Robbie's body. But the pill will make you smarter. Wouldn't you like that? Robbie shrugged. Do you still like Thomas? Jen asked. Yeah. Robbie thought back on how much fun it was hanging out with him at the pool the other day. He's smart, isn't he? And he'd love a smart girl. Robbie wrinkled her forehead. Jen had a point. He'd really think that was hot, wouldn't he? Robbie said. The idea was beginning to get appealing. Deaf, said Jen. There was a long pause. So take the pill, Jen finally said. Robbie picked up the pill cautiously and looked it over. It won't make me all nerdy, will it? She asked. Jen nodded no. Without saying anything more, Robbie grabbed the pill and swallowed it. I feel so smart already, Robbie said, dancing a little. Jen laughed. Robbie was as ditzy as before. No effect yet. The towel fell off Robbie's body. Jen looked at her, a little disconcerted. This was still her father, she had to remind herself. Do you think I'm pretty? Asked Robbie. Jen almost laughed, but stopped, realizing that Robbie was deadly serious. She was pretty, and knew it. But she still wanted validation, like any 15-year-old girl. You are gorgeous, Jen replied. It was true. And I'm smart now too, Robbie said, thrilled with the idea. Well, I think you will be, maybe not now, but soon, Jen said diplomatically. Robbie hugged her hard, then bounded out of the bathroom and down the hall, absolutely clueless that she was still naked, and went into Jen's room to change. Robbie wanted to put her new brain to use. She giggled a little when she thought of herself as a brain. It just seemed so strange. Now was the time to impress Thomas, the smart boy she'd met at the pool party the other day, with her new intellect. But she would be sexy too. She first put on a pair of her new panties. They were white string bikini style with little red dots on them. With that, she put on a white push-up bra that really made her girls stand out. Then she put on a cropped blue top which stopped just short of her belly button. Then came the bottom, a black and blue plaid mini skirt about 12-inch long, shorter than she'd ever worn before. Good thing she had new panties on, she thought, because they were going to be seen for sure. Lastly, some black, ankle-high leather boots. Some quick eyeliner and lip gloss to fix her face, and she was done. She looked in the mirror. She was cute, she thought. She preened and turned, made faces, struck poses, craned to see her behind. Her body passed on her tests. She really did wish she looked older. Her look was still more of an adorable young girl than the sexy seductress she was aiming for, but it would have to do. She snuck out of the bedroom and tiptoed out to the back door. Everyone else was in the living room watching TV, completely unaware that she was going out. She really was glad that she took that pill. How else could she outsmart everyone like this? The bus took a long time to get over to Thomas's house. She kept thinking about how thrilled he'd be to see her, and she'd be talking smart things like him. But then things began to go wrong. The first thing she noticed was that she hadn't shaved her legs. She could have kicked herself. She wanted to be perfect, but there was some visible stubble on both legs. Looking more closely, however, she saw that it wasn't just stubble, but actual hair. She couldn't believe she'd let it go unshaven for so long. She tugged at the hem of her miniskirt, futilely trying to cover up the hair, but it was no use. She didn't know what the heck was going on. Just then she saw her stop was coming up. Thomas's house. Please stop here, she told the driver. The voice, however, surprised her. Instead of her normal sing-song voice, it was deep and more than husky. Could she be getting a cold? No matter, she thought. Thomas will be glad to see me. She didn't notice it, but the other passengers on the bus were staring at the 15-year-old boy in a skirt who was getting off the bus.